The holiday season is here, which means it's time to spend, and the Rangers are definitely going to spend this offseason. On today's show, I'm breaking down what the Rangers' wish list is versus what they want and for what they need. Break down all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are locked on to the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, covering this team for 10 seasons, including all 5 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we get into this episode, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, it is officially the season. Thanksgiving is over. I'm recording this the day before Thanksgiving, so for me, it's not yet over, but I am seeing into the future, and eventually it will be the holiday season where you buy a lot of gifts for your friends, for your family members, for loved ones, for spouses, for co-workers at office parties, whatever you buy gifts for. The Rangers are hopefully almost assuredly going to buy at least one nice gift for Rangers fans coming off a championship season with a lot of excess money. They got you get a lot of money when you win the World Series, and the Rangers were already not poor. And this team is set up to, as currently constructed, still a very good team, still a World Series contender, but definitely has some needs that they should address this offseason. And in terms of needs, I'd say an absolute need is one starting pitcher, preferably top of the line. I mean, if you can get a great starting pitcher as opposed to a mediocre one, obviously, that would be nice. Better is better. It's not hard to overthink it. And the only other thing that the Rangers need is, I'd say, at least one good reliever. Good as in 7th, 8th inning kind of guy. One of the guys who you want. I mean, you have two sides of your bullpen. You have the winning side and the losing side. And the Rangers' winning side of their bullpen, you had 3 guys in the playoffs last year that you trusted in those late inning high leverage situations, in Josh Sborz, Aroldis Chapman, and Jose Leclerc. Now Josh Sborz is back. Jose Leclerc is also back. Aroldis Chapman is a free agent, and so the Rangers need one more high leverage guy in their pen. It could be somebody internal, but I think there are quite a few good free agent options. There's also a chance that the Rangers trade for a top-end starting pitcher as opposed to signing one on the free agent market. There's also a chance they trade for one and also sign a different one. But I think that just one starting pitcher would put this rotation in an ideal situation. Same with one reliever. And let's go on to the Rangers' wants. Well, at top of your want list, at least for me, is Shohei Ohtani. He is a luxury item and not a necessity, but something that would make Rangers' lives much better, my life much better, your life much better. Watching Shohei Ohtani on your favorite team would be a whole heck of a lot of fun. But the Rangers don't necessarily need him. They won the World Series without him last year, but it would be much easier to win next year's World Series with him on your team, even though he is not going to pitch. So Shohei, definitely in the, if you're a kid, asking for like a game system for Christmas of like, oh, I don't know, it's a long shot, but like, if we get it, it'd be absolutely amazing. It reminds me of, when I was very young, I think like kindergarten or something. I still believed in Santa Claus, and my brother and I were asking our parents for a Nintendo 64. That's just dating myself just a little bit. We were like, please, Mom, Dad, please get us an N64. And they were adamant. Oh, no, we are never going to buy you a Nintendo 64. There's no way. I mean, maybe Santa gets you one, but there's no way we're buying you an N64. And sure enough, Santa was very generous that year and brought us a Nintendo 64, which sparked my belief in Santa a few more years. And if Shohei Ohtani signed with the Texas Rangers, that will definitely re-spark my belief in Santa Claus, because it means miracles are most definitely possible. But the other wants the Rangers have is one more reliever. You sign one, but getting two would be very, very nice. And just a DH. The Rangers have plenty of bats that, as of right now, as of this, if the Rangers played a game tomorrow, I think they're, as the roster currently constructed, I think Ezekiel Duran would be the everyday DH. Maybe Wyatt Langford comes up at the beginning of the year and is DH. I think it kind of depends on that. We'll get into that in just a second. But needing a DH, it's not a need. Mitch Garver is gone for agency. Maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. But the Rangers don't have a desperate need for a DH. But it'd be nice. Just one more little piece to add to this what's already going to be a fantastic lineup. Now, let's look at the ideal bullpen, I think, is Jose Leclerc and Josh Sborz, and then a couple of new relievers. And then the other guys in this pen would be Antoine Kelly, Jonathan Hernandez, Brock Burke, and then I think Dane Dunning as the longman. My ideal rotation looks like whatever new acquired ace, whether that's traded for, whether that's signed. At the top of your rotation, Eovaldi, Scherzer, Gray, Heaney, and then Dunning and Bradford as your depth options, and then Jacob deGrom coming back in August. That is a very, very good rotation. And there are basically two kinds of starting pitchers that you can sign, that you can have in Major League Baseball. There's ones who can start a playoff game for you, and ones who cannot. And the Rangers went into last season with, I'd say, 5 guys who they thought could start a playoff game for them. They had Jacob deGrom. They had Nate Eovaldi. They had Andrew Heaney. They had John Gray. That's 4. And then Martin Perez, who they thought could start a playoff game for them. That was 5. Maybe you thought Dane Dunning was in that category. I'll be generous to him and say yes. Maybe you thought Jake Odorizzi was in that category. We never got to find that out. So that was 7 guys the Rangers went into camp with that they thought could start a playoff game for them. And right now, as the rotation currently stands, you have Eovaldi, Scherzer, Gray, Heaney, Dunning. And that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys who you think can start a playoff game for you. And maybe Jacob deGrom, depending on when he comes back. The projection is in August, but, I mean, who knows? So the Rangers have about as many guys as they did to start last year, but they also traded for 2 more at the deadline. And I don't know if the Rangers are going to do that again this year. We'll see. It's possible. They still have a very deep farm system, not quite as deep as last year because of the guys who they traded away, which, again, absolutely worth it because the Rangers won the World Series. But yeah, acquiring one more top-end can start a playoff game for you kind of pitcher would be absolutely ideal. Now let's look at my preference. I have these guys sorted into several different categories for the free agent starting pitchers that the Rangers could sign. We're getting into that in just a second, and the Rangers' possible trade chips, and a little bit of look at DH and reliever options. Right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. This is coming after the day that the Cowboys play on Thanksgiving, so maybe they won that game. Maybe they lost. Maybe you're feeling good about the Cowboys' odds to go all the way to the Super Bowl. Maybe you're feeling good about some Micah Parsons Defensive Player of the Year odds. Maybe you wanted to go bet on that, but you can check out all that FanDuel has to offer. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Shout out to the everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On Monday's show, I'll be back probably talking about Adrian Beltre and his case for the Hall of Fame, because he is finally on the Hall of Fame ballot. And I'll be talking about why he is a surefire, should be unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer, or maybe by then, it will have been 5 days from when I'm recording this, maybe there will be some free agent news. Now, let's look at the first category of starting pitching free agents. This is the want badly, very much want the Rangers to sign these guys. This is guys who I think are a great fit, who I think will be worth the money, and I think fit well with the Rangers timeline. The first guy on this list is Jordan Montgomery. Bring Monty back. Bring him back. It was a fantastic run for Jordan Montgomery through the playoffs. Had a great time in Texas, 11 starts with the Rangers, a 2.1 baseball reference WAR, coming off a 4-WAR season. Was just fantastic for the Rangers for almost the entirety of the playoffs. Was excellent in his first start, not so great against Baltimore, but absolutely sensational against the Astros. Pitched 3 games. The Rangers won 2 of those 3 games and was the only person on earth who could kind of handle Jordan Alvarez. Like, it was just beautiful how he pitched Jordan Alvarez. Just absolutely sensational. And he is projected for a 6-year, $110.4 million contract, according to Spotrac. I think that's about accurate. That's 6 years, $18.4 million per year. That is about what I think he'll get. He is going to turn 31 during this offseason, and he's a guy who's had a decently long track record, not insanely long track record of durability, but I mean, he's a lefty. He will go out there every 5th day. His upside, he showed what the best version of him can look like in the playoffs, which is not something that I thought he was capable of. I didn't think that he could be that good, and he was for a pretty prolonged stretch. And even with the Rangers, I mean, 67 and 2/3 innings, a 2.79 ERA in those 11 starts. He was just honestly very freaking good for the Rangers, very consistent. And without him, the Rangers not only don't get to the playoffs, but they definitely don't go all the way to the World Series. And I don't think that they win the whole thing without Jordan Montgomery. And he fits well with the clubhouse. He is a lefty. Another lefty in that rotation is good, especially a lefty who can start playoff games for you. Andrew Heaney can start playoff games for you, but again, I'm not sure the Rangers are getting 2 healthy seasons from Andrew Heaney in a row. That's not to knock him. I mean, that you could say the same for basically any pitcher in the history of baseball, especially right now. Well, not the history of baseball, because Nolan Ryan's arm never fell off, and Cy Young pitched 500 innings per year. But baseball throwers nowadays, they're a little more brittle. So sign a bunch of them. Next guy on this list of want badly is Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the 25-year-old Japanese ace, coming over from Nippon Professional Baseball, where he has won, I believe, 3 straight, at least 2 of the Samura Awards, which is the Japanese equivalent of the Cy Young. He is very young. He is going to get probably 7 years. He is going to get almost assuredly over $200 million. The reason that I have him behind Jordan Montgomery is not because I think Jordan Montgomery is better than him. It's just these long-term contracts. The Rangers already have 3 guys on the books that are big money, long-term contracts. And if the Rangers were to sign one person this offseason for $150+ million, well, Shohei is the number one choice. But if it's not Shohei, then it's Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I think he would fit up well with this timeline. The Rangers have a lot of older pitchers on their roster, and their position players are, technically younger. They've got a young core in Josh Young and Evan Carter and Leo Taveras and Ezekiel Duran as well, and eventually Wyatt Langford coming up. Those are all young guys who will be good for the long haul. And Scherzer's a little bit older, and he comes off the books after this year. DeGrom is getting a little bit older. Eovaldi is getting a little bit older. John Gray is on the wrong side of 30, or maybe it's the right side of 30, but for pitchers, it's definitely the wrong side of 30. So if you're going to commit big money to a guy, why not do it to a 25-year-old who's got a pretty good track record, still hasn't done it in Major League Baseball before, but I feel like that concern is getting very overblown. We've seen these Japanese pitchers come over and be absolutely sensational right out of the gates. I mean, remember how good Yu Darvish was his first year in professional baseball with the Rangers? It's pretty darn good. And he would have been Rookie of the Year if not for some guy named Mike Trout, who had a pretty darn good rookie year in that 2012 season. Also, Kodai Senga, did we not just see what he did? He's absolutely sensational. Absolutely sensational in his first year. Now, Kodai Senga is a little bit older than Yamamoto. Yu Darvish is more that age and more that arsenal of the high velocity fastball, lots of stuff, lots of strikeouts. I think he's going to be very, very good. I think there are going to be a lot of teams very much in on Yamamoto, teams who I don't think are going to be as much in the running for Shohei Ohtani. So I think those teams might get very aggressive, and I think he's probably going to sign after Shohei, because whoever doesn't get Shohei is going to have a lot of money they thought they were going to spend on Shohei to spend on someone else, and Yamamoto is probably going to get a lot of that money. Next guy in this list is Sonny Gray. He is, again, on the older side, but coming off a very, very good season. Finished up, I believe, second in the Cy Young voting. He is a little bit older, but he has been, pretty consistent, and the top end is very, very much someone who I think fits up with this Rangers staff. I mean, could be getting about $20 million per year, I think is what the projection is. Yeah, according to SpotTrack, $20.3 million per year over a 3-year contract. I would definitely do that for him. He is just turned 34 less than a month ago. So still, I think has some pretty good years in him, and I think would definitely be a good fit for the Rangers. Now, the last guy on this list is kind of a curveball. The news just came out that within the next week he will be posted. This is Shota Imanaga, a 30-year-old left-handed pitcher out of Japan. He is not Yamamoto. He is a different guy playing for a different team who is a little bit older, throws with a different hand. Both of them are 5'10". Both of them are from Japan. Both of them are very good pitchers, but that is kind of where the similarities end. Now, Imanaga is not quite of that top tier. I think if the Rangers did end up signing him, I think he would fit into this rotation probably as the number 3 starter. I think he'd be a little bit behind Scherzer, maybe ahead of John Gray, maybe a little bit behind John Gray, but he is projected to make 5 years, $85 million. He is a guy who has very good strikeout stuff, led the league in strikeouts per 9 in Japan last year. I think he is going to be a solid pitcher. Not anybody who's super flashy. I think he's a guy who probably could start a playoff game for the Rangers. And I think he has been durable, and I like the fit. I like having another lefty in this rotation. I think that he is going to be a guy who goes a little bit under the radar, but I think he could be a very, very solid player in MLB next season. And he's a guy who I think just all the things that I like about starting pitchers and the things that I look for in what the Rangers need, I think that he fits that model very, very well. Now, the next tier we're going to get into in just a second of players that I would be okay with the Rangers acquiring for their starting rotation, then some risky but worth it guys, and guys who I absolutely would not dream about before we get into the bullpen and the DH options. Right after this word from our sponsors. Shout out to the everydayers making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. Back on Tuesday's show, maybe even doing a crossover. We're going to work on some more crossovers, planning on a crossover at some point this offseason, talking with Ben Kaspick of Locked On Giants about Bruce Bochy and his legacy, and how he won both of our favorite teams their first World Series in this city. Now, let's look at the would be okay with. This is the second tier for me of guys who I'd be okay with the Rangers signing. Not over the moon, but I think would be good fits, just not exactly what I'm wanting. There are 3 guys in this category. There's Blake Snell, Michael Wacha, and Lucas Giolito. 3 very different types of starting pitchers. Blake Snell, I mean, signing a guy coming off a Cy Young season, putting him I guess I'd be okay with my favorite team signing a guy who's got 2 Cy Young awards. Like, I guess I'm okay with that. Does sound very privileged. And it is. It absolutely is. And he is a lefty. The thing that I like about starting pitchers is I want the Rangers to add a lefty because lefties are fun. And this one is probably the best left-handed starting pitcher in baseball right now. I'd say he definitely won that title this year. But the consistency scares me. The walks scare me. Signing him to a big long-term deal, and there haven't been a whole lot of seasons where he's even given 150 plus innings. that kind of scares me to pay an ace money for a guy who is not going to be pitching you very deep into games very often. That kind of worries me. Michael Wacha is also on this list because he's a little bit older. I'm not sure how much I trust the success that he has had the last couple years. Maybe it continues, but I'm just a little skeptical of it. I think it'd be fine. It's not going to be some big deal that he gets. I think it'd be probably a 2 or 3 year deal, which I would be okay with. But I'm just a little skeptical on it. And Lucas Giolito, I'd be okay with it in more of the positive sense. I think he's definitely a guy who's very, very durable. And with Aaron Noah off the market, he is a guy whose track record I trust the most in terms of durability from these free agents. And I think there's definitely some upside there that the Rangers and Mike Maddox could definitely fix. Next tier is risky, but maybe worth it. These are a few guys who are coming off of either injuries or just bad seasons. Brandon Woodruff is a guy who's been one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball for the last 4 or 5 years, but he is will be coming off shoulder surgery. He is going to miss the entirety of the 2024 season. It would probably take at least a 2-year deal. Maybe some team will sign him to a 3-year deal, but shoulder surgeries are very scary. Shoulder injuries are very scary in general. You never know what a guy is going to look like when he comes back from a shoulder injury, so I don't know that I would do this. I could see the upside. If the Rangers do it, then that means that they trust the medical and trust the upside there. But the Rangers already have one very, very good pitcher who's going to be on the shelf for most or all of this year, Jacob deGrom, and then get them back in 2025. And if they sign Shohei, then they'll have 2 such pitchers. And if they sign Shohei and also sign Brandon Woodruff, having 3 guys that are not going to pitch maybe at all this year, maybe one guy at the end of the year, and then come back for 2025, coming off injuries. We'll see what that looks like. That's a lot of risk, but maybe I'd be okay with it. And then the last tier is guys who I just would not dream about it because of off-the-field issues, and I just don't think they're going to be good enough to be worth it. That is guys like Trevor Bauer, Mike Clevenger, Julio Urias. They have one thing very much in common, and you can Google it because I don't need to talk more about it. Now, let's look at the trades for starting pitchers. I think there are 2 main guys that the Rangers will be interested in and considering trading for. That's Corbin Burnes and Tyler Glasnow. I think Ezekiel Duran is going to be the frontline piece in either of those deals. Maybe it's Leo Taveras if it's the Rays. But for Corbin Burnes, I'd say Duran and Foscue. Corbin Burnes is the guy who I'd most definitely prefer. He has been one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball for the last 5 years. He has just been, or 4 years? Yeah, 4 years, since 2020. He is in the top 10 for strikeouts per 9 in that span at 11.06. He is in the top 10 in innings pitched, actually 5th in innings pitched, and in terms of ERA since the 2020 season, he is also in the top 10 as well for that at 5th, actually. So, and in terms of WAR, he is the 2nd best pitcher in the last 4 seasons, behind only Zach Wheeler. That's really impressive, according to FanGraphs. So I like his track record of durability. I like that he doesn't walk anybody. I like that he strikes a lot of guys out. I like that he doesn't allow a lot of runs, and he pitches every 5th day. I like that a lot. I think he's worth it. Glasnow I'd be more hesitant to trade for because, again, the risk starting pitchers that have that many injury issues really most definitely worry me. Now let's look at the relief options. There are a lot of guys here, and I think the top of my list right now is Keenan Middleton. Top of that list was Reynaldo Lopez, who signed a deal with the Braves to be a starting pitcher, which I did not expect some team to try and give him a chance to go back to starting, but the Braves see something in there, and they're taking a chance on it, and good for them. I think he is going to be very good, and I also hope that means that they get Lucas Giolito because both those guys have been together at 4 different stops now on their major league career, always going with one another. So separating them would feel like splitting up twins in the divorce. Be very, very rude. But Keenan Middleton, I think, is my top option who I would want the Rangers to sign. Obviously, Josh Hader's out there, but again, paying a reliever, I've said this a bunch of times this offseason, paying one reliever like $20 million a year, it scares the bejesus out of me. I'd rather go pay 2 guys $10 million a year than one guy $20 million a year. He's only projected to get like $18 million per year, but he will close in on that Edwin Diaz contract, I think, for sure. But again, Keenan Middleton projected to get 2 years, $15 million. Matt Moore at 2 years and $6.8 million, I think would be also very good. Wandy Peralta is a lefty who's been with the Yankees, who I'm definitely keeping an eye on. Other guys in this class who interest me, Colin McHugh, Adam Ottavino. Nick Martinez is going to get a lot of money to be a kind of swingman, and I don't think the Rangers want to give him swingman money, although I would love the reunion for former Ranger great Nick Martinez. I don't think it's happening. Lucha, kind of intrigues me. Michael Fulmer, Ryan Stanek also kind of intriguing. Emilio Pagan and Colin McHugh are also guys who I would keep an eye on. Hector Neris is an option. I think there's some bad blood there, and I don't think the Rangers will be kicking the tires on him. Also, he's thrown about 1 million games the last few years, which I think is why the Astros are not going to bring him back, because they have just run him into the ground, and relievers who throw a crap ton of innings get less effective, and he is up there in his mid-30s, so I would kind of stay away from that. But Andrew Chafin is also another guy who I would look at. Again, my top tier guys, Keenan Middleton, Matt Moore reunion, Wandy Peralta. Those are my big three that I'm looking for. But again, kind of throw a dart at a board for these relievers. Sign a couple guys, hope they're good, and if they're not, then they're relievers. Don't sign them to a 5-year deal, and you'll be fine. You can move them if they're bad, or you can cut them if they're bad. It happens. Now, let's look at the DH option. But before we get to that, I think the DH is going to kind of come down to Wyatt Langford. Whether the Rangers actually sign a DH, whether they want a DH or need a DH, having an everyday DH is a very, very helpful thing. Having a guy who's in there just for his bat, especially really only if you have a good one. The Rangers have done that in their best 3 years. They have had a primary DH who has been very, very good. This year, they had Mitch Garver. In 2010, you might remember a guy named Vladimir Guerrero. He had a son who's half decent at baseball. But Vladimir Guerrero was the Rangers DH in 2010, and he was really freaking good. And in 2011, it was Michael Young, super utility / DH guy. More super utility than DH, but I kind of forgot how good of a 2011 season Michael Young had. He was a big part of why that lineup was so freaking good. An 854 OPS, a 380 on base, and he hit 338 that year. He was nuts. He was absolutely nuts. And pissed that he lost his spot to Adrian Beltre, but Adrian Beltre was sensational, and they all got along and went to World Series, and now Michael Young has a ring as a member of the front office. So, but all of that to say, I think whether the Rangers sign a DH or not will tell you how much they believe in Wyatt Langford and how much they believe he's going to be ready to start the year out of spring training as a big leaguer, because right now he is projected by Fangraphs to have a very, very good season. Of the hitters who have not made their major league debuts yet, the highest weighted runs created plus projection from Fangraphs goes to, of course, Wyatt Langford, a 121 WRC plus. That is a catch-all metric for offensive value. They expect him to be 21% better than league average with the stick in year one. For some reference, for some context of what a good WRC plus is, this year Marcus Semien and Adolis Garcia had a 124 WRC plus. So they're expecting about that kind of level production from Wyatt Langford. I mean, 94 games, 16 home runs, an on base of 351, a slugging percentage of 458. That is an 1.5 WAR in 94 games and 406 plate appearances. That's what they're expecting from Wyatt Langford in his rookie year next year. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. And again, I think that he is probably, if I were to venture a bet, if the Rangers don't sign DH, I would say he is the Rangers opening day DH. Or no, I'd say he's at DH, because you'll have the outfield of Leo Taveras in center and Evan Carter in left and Adolis Garcia in right field, and adios to Mitch Garver, and then in comes Wyatt Langford as your everyday DH to also give the occasional day off to Evan Carter or Adolis Garcia or Leo Taveras or whoever needs a day off. And definitely I think Evan Carter will have some days off against lefties, where Wyatt Langford will probably be in the major leagues with the Rangers this year. But again, I think it all comes down to that. But if you want to give yourself some cushion, I think signing a 1-year DH, because maybe Langford's not ready for opening day. Maybe he takes until June, or maybe he takes until September. I mean, it's still insane talking about a guy who was drafted last year to make his major league debut and make an impact on a team that is going for a second straight World Series title. It's nuts. It is a high bar. And even if he struggles in AAA to start the season or doesn't look that great in camp and takes a little while to get the big leagues, it's fine. That will be his first full year of professional baseball. Like, it happens. It's fine. There won't be a need to worry. But also he's really freaking good, so he might be ready. But if you are looking at a DH option, I think my top guy is bringing back Mitch Garver. He is projected to get about $10 million a year, which I think is definitely worth it for Garver money. 3 years, $30 million. If somebody views him as an everyday catcher, and they would probably give him, 3 years, $45 million. I think I'd be out at that price. Other guys who I think would be interesting, JD Martinez, to a 1-year deal. I mean, his walk rate going down and his strikeout rate going way up last year kind of worries me. But again, he has been very, very consistent, and he still hits the crap out of the ball. And if you need to move on from him after a year because Wyatt Langford is banging down the door and, his play is demanding, at-bats at the major league level, I think that's fine. Other options I think the Rangers might consider, but I don't think that the years are going to work out. Jorge Soler is a guy who I think is really, really interesting. He hits for a lot of power, and if you put him just at DH, then I think that'd be a great bat to insert in this lineup. But again, that would create a problem where you're not getting everyday at-bats at some point by the end of this year for Wyatt Langford and Leo Taveras and Adolis and Evan Carter, and all of those guys are everyday players. So that is 4 guys for 3 spots. You probably trade somebody, which I wouldn't love doing, but again, we'll see. That is a problem, a good problem for the Rangers to have, but it is still a problem nonetheless. Some other guys that are out there, I think anybody on like multi-year deals is a no-go for the Rangers unless they want to trade, probably Leo Taveras of that group of 3 young outfielders, not including Adolis Garcia. That would be the way. But there's some other guys who are options. I think Joey Votto would be interesting. Brandon Belt would be interesting. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., interesting. Robbie Grossman reunion, anybody? Maybe. Entirely possible. Or just not having the option of 3-hole hitter Robbie Grossman to deny Bruce Bochy that temptation would be very, very nice. But, who cares? Rangers won it all. Even if Robbie Grossman's hitting third for a bunch of games for the Rangers next year, it's going to be hard to complain because the Rangers are World Series champions. This is their list of wants and needs. Hope this was a nice Black Friday episode for you to get your head around where the Rangers are spending. Hopefully this is not untimely. Hopefully not a lot of these guys have signed in the next couple days until I post this. But even if they do, oh well, it's fine. We'll get over it, and we'll see what the Rangers do during this holiday season and what they spend their dollars on. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.